the lights of New York, the deafening roar of the American crowd, and a budding rivalry that is rapidly becoming one of the most fascinating storylines in modern tennis. When you hear the phrase exhibition match, you usually picture a relaxed atmosphere. You expect trick shots, smiles, and a casual showcase of talent between close friends. That is exactly what the thousands of fans packing the stadium for the stars of the Open thought they were about to witness. They expected a light-hearted battle between two of the sport's most electrifying young talents, Alexandra Eala and the American sensation, Iva Jovic. But what they actually got was something entirely different. What unfolded on that court was a ruthless, explosive display of power that sent shockwaves through the entire American audience. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we are diving deep into a moment that has the entire tennis world buzzing. Alexandra Eala didn't just show up to this premier U.S. Open Fan Week event. She arrived with a blazing intensity that caught everyone, especially the hometown crowd, completely off guard. This story is about much more than just a single event in New York. It is about a complex dynamic between two exceptional athletes who are close friends off the court, but fierce gladiators the moment they step between the lines. Going into this highly anticipated showdown, the historical context was heavy. Jovic had previously secured significant victories over Eala on some of the sport's biggest stages, including a commanding clash on the clay of Roland Garros, and another intense meeting on the grass courts of London earlier this year. For Eala, the stars of the Open wasn't just a promotional appearance. It was a golden opportunity to recalibrate. It was a chance to prove that her game possesses the sheer firepower necessary to disrupt the rhythm of one of America's brightest prospects right in her own backyard. In this video, we are going to dissect the anatomy of this shocking performance. We will break down the tactical evolution of Alexandra Eala, examining how she managed to unleash such an explosive level of tennis under the bright lights. We will look at the unique psychological warfare competing against a close friend who has historically had your number. And finally, we will explore what this blistering performance means for the future of both players as they continue to climb the ranks of the professional tour. But to truly comprehend the magnitude of this moment, and to understand exactly why the American crowd was left reeling, we have to go back to the opening minutes of the night. Because from the very first strike of the ball, one thing became undeniably clear. Alexandra Eala did not travel to New York to play a friendly exhibition. She came to make a statement. The atmosphere at the USTA Billie Jean King National Tennis Center during the week preceding the main draw of the U.S. Open is unlike anything else in the sport. The air is thick with anticipation. The ground are teeming with fans looking for a glimpse of the future, and the exhibition matches are typically marked by a sense of celebration. When Alexandra Eala and Iva Jovic stepped onto court, the crowd was fully prepared for a showcase of youthful exuberance and shot-making. What they received, instead, was a masterclass in aggressive, unapologetic baseline warfare. From the very first exchange, the acoustic quality of the match felt entirely different than a standard exhibition. The sharp, piercing crack of the ball coming off Eala's strings echoed through the stadium, signaling an intent that was purely strictly business. She was stepping inside the baseline, taking the ball astonishingly early on the rise, and refusing to yield a single inch of territory. Eala was not just playing the ball, she was dictating the physical space of the court. Iva Jovic, an extraordinary talent carrying the immense expectations of the American tennis public, is not a player who is easily overwhelmed. Known for her remarkable court coverage, her tactical intelligence, and her ability to absorb pace, the young American initially attempted to establish her typical rhythm. She dug her heels in, utilizing her heavy ground strokes to push Eala backward, testing the waters to see if the Filipina prodigy could maintain this red-hot intensity. But this version of Alexandra Eala was operating on a completely different frequency. Historically, in their previous encounters in Paris and London, Jovic had successfully managed to rush Eala, forcing her into uncomfortable defensive positions. But on this night in New York, Eala flipped the script with devastating precision. Her tactical blueprint was clear. Neutralize the Jovic serve immediately and turn every neutral rally into a foot race. The most striking observation was Eala's utilization of her left-handed advantage. She relentlessly targeted the Jovic backhand with heavy, dipping topspin, dragging the American wide off the court. And the moment Jovic left the ball, sitting even a fraction of a second too short, Eala unleashed a ferocious down-the-line forehand that painted the edges of the court. The margins she was playing with were perilously thin, yet her execution was remarkably clean. She was painting the lines with the cold, calculated precision of a seasoned veteran. The turning point of the evening did not hinge on a dramatic net cord or a controversial line call. Instead, it was a gradual, suffocating escalation of pressure that culminated in a sequence of absolute brilliance. During a series of grueling, side-to-side rallies that tested the lung capacity of both athletes, Eala found another gear. She refused to retreat. Even when pushed deep into the corners, she opted for the aggressive passing shot over the defensive lob. She was matching Jovic's formidable power and then adding her own explosive topspin to the equation. This was an explosion that left the spectators breathless. It was a sustained barrage of offensive tennis that simply overwhelmed the defense across the net. Eala was transitioning from defense to offense in the blink of an eye, turning what looked like a lost point into a clean winner with a single flick of her wrists. For the American fans in attendance, it was a staggering sight. They had arrived eager to cheer on their homegrown star, fully expecting Jovic to dictate the narrative as she had in their recent high-profile meetings. But as the match progressed, the partisan cheers slowly transformed into a collective, stunned murmur. The crowd found themselves witnessing a visiting player completely dismantle the expected storyline. The sheer force of Eala's shot-making demanded respect, and the New York crowd, known for its deep appreciation of gladiatorial combat on the tennis court, began to applaud the sheer audacity of the Filipina's performance. Jovic fought valiantly, showcasing the exact grit and resilience that makes her such a highly touted prospect. She altered her spin. She tried to change the tempo, and she fought for every single point with champion's mentality. But on this specific night, under these specific lights, Eala was a force of nature. She possessed an answer for every tactical adjustment Jovic attempted. The match served as a visceral reminder just how quickly momentum can shift in professional tennis, and how one player's absolute refusal to lose can rewrite the script in real time. Eala had walked into the lion's den, faced down a rival who had previously held the psychological edge, and delivered a performance of breathtaking ferocity. But to fully grasp the weight of what happened on that court, we have to look beyond the highlights and the spectacular winners. We have to examine the underlying mechanics of Eala's game and the historical context of this burgeoning rivalry. Because what we saw in New York wasn't just a great night of tennis. It was a potential turning point in a rivalry that could define the next decade of the WTA Tour. To truly appreciate the magnitude of Alexandra Eala's performance, we have to strip away the emotion of the crowd and look at the cold, hard mechanics of this matchup. When expert analysts break down the tape of this encounter, they won't just see a player hitting the ball hard. They will see a tactical masterclass in real-time adaptation. Let's examine the historical context. When Iva Jovic defeated Eala at Roland Garros and later in London, a distinct pattern emerged. In those previous meetings, Jovic expertly utilized the surface to her advantage. On the clay, she used her heavy, consistent ground strokes to exploit the high bounce, pinning Eala deep behind the baseline and forcing errors. On the grass, Jovic's ability to stay low and absorb pace frustrated the Filipina, neutralizing Eala's offensive weapons. Jovic had effectively built a psychological fortress. She had proven she could dismantle Eala's game in radically different conditions. But the hard courts of New York present an entirely different battleground. The surface is truer, the bounce is more predictable, and for a player willing to step inside the baseline and take the ball early, it is a canvas for pure aggression. Eala understood this fundamentally. She recognized that trying to outgrind Jovic in long, neutral rallies was a losing proposition. The Americans' lateral movement and defensive anticipation are simply too elite. So, Eala changed the geometry of the court. The most glaring tactical shift was Eala's court positioning. In their previous matches, Eala averaged a contact point significantly further back from the baseline. Here, she was hovering right on top of it. By taking the ball on the rise, she was robbing Jovic of the one thing defensive counterpunchers desperately need: time. Every fraction of a second Eala shaved off the rally forced Jovic to hit her next shot from a rushed, compromised position. But taking the ball early is a high-risk strategy. It requires immaculate footwork, perfect timing, and supreme confidence. If a player is even slightly hesitant, the ball will spray long or dump into the net. Eala's execution, however, was flawless. Her footwork was a blur of efficiency, allowing her to set up her kinetic chain perfectly behind every strike. Then there's the weapon itself, the left-handed forehand. In the modern women's game, the left-handed cross-court forehand into a right-hander's backhand is a classic, devastating pattern. But Jovic has one of the sturdiest two-handed backhands among the rising generation. She rarely breaks down under pressure. Eala's solution was not just a hit with more pace, but to drastically alter the trajectory and spin. She generated exceptional RPMs, causing the ball to dip viciously at Jovic's feet before exploding off the court surface. Instead of allowing Jovic to lean into her backhand at waist height, Eala forced her to constantly adjust to a ball that was either skidding low or jumping high out of the strike zone. Yet, perhaps the most fascinating aspect of this entire encounter was the psychological warfare taking place between the lines. These two athletes know each other intimately. They have shared practice courts. They know each other's tendencies, and they understand the emotional triggers that can sway a match. For Eala, stepping onto the court against an opponent who had recently bested her on two major stages carried a massive mental burden. In professional tennis, the transition from highly touted junior to consistent main tour threat is often derailed not by a lack of physical talent, but by mental scarring. Losing repeatedly to a peer can create a subconscious block that is incredibly difficult to overcome. By coming out with such unbridled aggression, Eala was not just hitting tennis balls. She was actively dismantling that mental block. Every blistering winner down the line was a statement of self-belief. It was a declaration that she possesses the top-tier ceiling required to not only compete with, but completely overpower the very best of her generation. For Jovic, the match highlighted a crucial learning curve. Her defensive skills and consistency are world-class, but when an opponent enters a transcendent, unplayable zone, a plan B is required. This encounter will serve as a vital piece of film for the American and her coaching team. It exposes the necessity of finding ways to disrupt an opponent's rhythm when they are striking the ball with such devastating clarity. This brings us to the most important question surrounding this rivalry. When a player produces a performance that sends shockwaves through a stadium and rattles a hometown favorite, what comes next? Does it change the trajectory of their season? The implications of this single exhibition match stretch far beyond the lights of New York. The broader landscape of women's tennis is currently undergoing a massive seismic shift. For years, the tour was dominated by a select few established veterans who held an iron grip on the major titles. But today, the gates have been blown wide open. A new generation of fearless, aggressive, and highly tactical players is storming the fortress, and a developing saga between Alexandra Eala and Iva Jovic is at the very heart of this revolution. Performances like the one we witnessed in New York are not isolated incidents. They are previews of the future. For Alexandra Eala, this elected display of power serves as the ultimate catalyst. Entering the grueling grind of the hard court swing with this level of baseline conviction completely alters the scouting report for her future opponents. Coaches and analysts across the tour will now have to factor in this explosive gear. They know that if she is given the slightest window to step inside the court, she has the capacity to take the racket completely out of her opponent's hands. The challenge of the Filipina star now shifts from merely proving she has a ceiling to reproducing this exact level of ruthless efficiency match after match, week after week. On the other side of the net, Iva Jovic remains one of the brightest prospects in the sport. One exhibition result, no matter how jarring, does not erase a season of brilliant consistency. In fact, champions are forged in the fires of these exact moments. The American has an elite tennis IQ, and this encounter will undoubtedly send her back to the practice court with a renewed focus on proactive, offensive variations. To reach the pinnacle of the sport, counterpunching must occasionally be supplemented with the ability to flip the switch and dictate play. Jovic possesses all the tools to make that adjustment, and when she does, her game will become even more bulletproof. This is the profound beauty of professional tennis. It is a constant, brutal evolution. When one player raises the bar and hits a shot heard around a crowded American stadium, the other has no choice but to elevate their own game in response. They are pulling each other toward greatness, forcing adaptations that neither might have discovered on their own. What began as a friendly rivalry in the junior ranks has rapidly transformed into a must-watch heavyweight clash on the professional circuit. The crowd at the Stars of the Open thought they were simply getting a glimpse of tomorrow. Instead, they were put on notice that the future has already arrived. The power dynamic between these two incredible athletes is shifting. The stakes are rising, and the tennis world is watching every single swing. This rivalry is far from over. In fact, the real war has only just begun. Who do you think will come out on top the next time these two titans clash in a main draw? Let us know your tactical breakdowns in the comments below. Make sure to hit that subscribe button for more premium deep dives into the greatest stories in sports, and stay tuned. The next chapter is waiting to be written.